Okay. 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 We do have a speaker for item 7 now. Just let you know.
Very good, thank you. And have you heard from any of our executive committee members, Adrian, whether they would not be able to make it today?
I've not heard any indication that the members are not able to attend today.
Okay, so we'll just give folks one more minute to trickle in before we begin. Adrian, do you see Director Ariola in the?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, he's in the attendees list. Can you bump him up? Thank you.
Okay.
All right, and I don't have a text number for Mayor May, so if anyone wants to ping her, feel free. But I'll go ahead and convene this meeting if I have to go ahead from the clerk.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. What if you would like me to start roll call?
Yeah, let me give some introductory remarks real quick. Good afternoon, everyone. The time is 12:03. This is the Executive Committee meeting of East Bay Community Energy, and today is Friday, May 28th. And I just want to state for the record, this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided for under the governor's executive order in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. So we're going to begin with our roll call first. So I'll turn it over to the clerk of the board.
Fair enough. Member Ariola.
Present.
Member Lopez.
Present.
Member Mai. Member Mai. Member Kolb.
Here.
And Chair Martinez.
I am here.
Yes, we have a quorum.
Adrian, just for Mayor May, she hasn't shown up yet, so I would just, when she arrives, watch for that.
Absolutely.
Very good. So we'll move to public comment. This time is reserved for persons wishing to address the executive committee on any EBCE related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. So as with all public comment, people can use a speaker slip, which is found on ebce.com and is linked on the agenda, or If you wish, if you're using Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature to be recognized. And if you're calling in, please press *9. So first we'll check to see if anyone has submitted electronic comments or a speaker slip for item 2 public comment.
Yes, we have. We have 4 speakers. I am going to recognize Audrey Ichinose, Jessica Tovar, Blair Beekman, and Andrew Clutie. Audrey Ichinose, I am unmuting you now.
Thank you. Audrey Ichinose, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. And I know that 1139, AB 1139 will be discussed later on, but my time constraints are such that I thought this would be more suitable. AB 1139 has raised so many controversial things, but 2 things are clear. One, it will dampen enthusiasm for rooftop solar. And secondly, it will tighten PG&E's grip on the transmission system and who pays for it. So how will this affect EBCE? You know, for one thing, many local development programs that EBC is working on depend on the expansion of rooftop solar. And these programs will be undermined by AB 1139. Secondly, EBCE and EBCE customers will be even more vulnerable to PG&E transmission charges, the chief cause of ratepayer bill increases. Today's New York Times published an extensive article on where wind and solar production will have to increase by 2050. And the map that they publish, it's really, really important to see, shows widespread dispersal across the United States, having crucial implications for long distance transmission. And so the writer writes, I quote, "That's why, according to many planners, the best option is to build energy sources close to population centers. They say that the US will still need to expand its network of high voltage transmission lines, but minimizing that expansion will be the simplest path forward. The cost of solar is so low these days that it really makes sense to install it close to where the demand is." AB 1139 purports to remedy social inequities arising from rooftop solar, but EBCE can do the same thing, and it can do more, especially if it increases that part of local development funding that benefits low income and disadvantaged communities. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
Great. Thank you, Audrey Ichinose. Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I'm really glad that Audrey spoke. We are urging everyone, the public and our local community choice program, to take a stand in opposing AB 1139 because it does seek to rid of local solar infrastructure, which is the whole point of our organizing, is really to build that clean energy future at home so that we can own those assets, so that we can create clean energy jobs, and for all the benefits that it would bring to affordability. And let me just remind folks that it is local clean energy that is the solution to having an infrastructure that does not cause wildfires. Remember, the transmission wires are old, aging, and unkept by PG&E and the monopoly utilities, and that is what's burning up the state of California and killing people. So I urge folks that you support our advocacy for local resilience hubs with off-grid energy. This will also affect the SOMA program, the solar on multi-affordable housing, that many of our environmental justice groups have fought for and are working on. So we really urge the public and our local community choice program to take a stand against AB 1139 that seeks to gut our local solar clean energy future. And aside from that, my second thing is our membership has been asking, and we need transparency on the issue. Last December, the EBCE board voted to sell Diablo Canyon Nuclear on the energy market, and that money would be used for local development or relief in the community. We are asking for transparency of the sale of that energy, what came of it, how much money it was made from it, and where is it going. And now that we're talking about the budget, I think this is a great time for us to get information on what came of that sale. And yeah, I really appreciate that. I just want to highlight that we have had some recent discussions with the local development business team. A lot of members of East Bay Clean Power Alliance have been in communication with them on clarity on the budget and on other programs like the Community Solar Green Tariff, for example. And so I appreciate that we're having that dialogue, and I look forward to us working together how to build this clean energy system locally for the East Bay, and have that ongoing relationship with East Bay Community Energy. Thank you. Clean power to the people.
Yes, Blair Beekman, you are recognized for 3 minutes. Blair Beekman, if you could just unmute yourself. You're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Blair Beekman here. My Zoom may cut out on me. Can you hear me?
There's something happening to
You
your
can hear
audio.
me now? Yeah, hi, my Zoom went out, so it happened. Thank you for the previous speaker. I think it's AB 1139. It's really the instead of pure solar power. Can you hear me now?
Blair, we're having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
No, it's not very good. So I'm going to ask you, we can take you out of order and we will recognize another speaker. If you could log off and log on again, we'll be happy to recognize you once you're back on. But Adrian, I believe there's another speaker that we could take in the meantime while Mr. Beekman fixes his technological issues.
Yes, I'm recognizing Ann Harvey for 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. I live in Oakland and I'm speaking for myself, not for organizations, but I'm a member of Climate Health Now, which is a group of almost 500 healthcare professionals statewide that's working toward a just and equitable transition to a cleaner system altogether, including building electrification, transportation electrification, and greening of our grid, as well as the 350 East Bay Oakland Hub, which is focusing partly also on building electrification and clean energy. And I'm also calling to ask you to strongly oppose AB 1139 because it will just take us so severely backwards in building out distributed renewable resources, which I think is one of the core principles of East Bay Community Energy. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Yes, we have one other speaker, Andrew Clutie, who is, I do not see Andrew Clutie in the speaker list. If you are, if you've dialed in, if you could please use #9 to use the raise hand feature.
Oh, it's *9, Adrian.
*9?
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, I can try to recognize Blair Beekman.
Yeah, let's try for Speaker Beekman again.
Blair Beekman, you are recognized for 3 minutes. Blair Beekman, if you could just unmute yourself. Otherwise, we can perhaps recognize him.
I did catch that Speaker Beekman was had mentioned AB 1139, and just wanted to let you know we will be addressing that on item 5, which is our legislative update. So if you're not able to speak at the moment, you will certainly have your time to speak on AB 1139. So with that, let's conclude public comment for the time being. And for those speakers that we didn't get to, we will be happy to address you later in the meeting. So can you stop sharing the timer? Thank you. So the first step, we've got approval of the minutes from April 30th, 2021. I do have one minor correction. So I'm going to go ahead and make the motion myself with the correction under future agenda items. What I was looking for was more general than a leadership academy, or it was to, I'll give you the phraseology, Adrian, if you don't mind putting this in, to expand legislative lobbying opportunities. So I think that covers all of the things that folks might want to talk about at a future meeting. It's just a little more inclusive of different ideas. So with that, I will move the minutes myself, and I wonder if I have a second, unless any colleagues have any other corrections or questions on the minutes.
Seconded.
I'll second it.
I think we got member Ariola came in first. And is there any discussion, colleagues? If not, we can go ahead and take a roll call vote, please. When you're ready, Adrian.
My apologies, I was muted. The roll call for the approval of minutes as amended. Member Ariola,
Yes.
Member Lopez,
Yes.
Member May, Member Kolb,
Aye.
and Chair Martinez.
Aye, and the minutes are passed unanimously among those present, which moves us to item 4. This is a draft budget review. It's an informational item that we have already received at our board of directors. So this is an opportunity for us to just go over the highlights and for the executive committee to offer any comments or have their questions answered. So I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Adrian. So why don't we go to the, why don't we start at the 4th slide?
The first slide or
4th slide, please. So I think just the major things I'm going to highlight here are, oh, it's okay, that's fine, just stay here. That's fine, this is fine, Adrian. Next slide, 5th slide is fine. The major things I want to highlight are just some modest modifications we have made since our last meeting, and then I am going to spend a little bit more time digging into the local development budget and talking in a little bit more detail about some of the programs we're intending to run this year. So the major change we've made since our last presentation is we updated our projections for how much from our current fiscal year we intend to should I see this? Okay. How much we intend to retain from you know, I'm sorry, there's an error. Why don't we go to the previous slide, because there's something that's not properly reflected here. I'll change it. So effectively what I'm saying is, in our last presentation, we had said we are going to defer $20 million of revenue in our GASB 62 revenue deferral account for future PCIA. And I think what we in further review, we recognize that we actually had from the previous fiscal year already deferred $12 million from in this GASB 62 account. So instead of deferring 20 million, we felt that given that the future PCI risk is really kind of in that $20 million range, it makes sense to defer less revenue from this current fiscal year into a future fiscal year. So we downsized the GASB recognition from 20 to 7.7 million, which resulted in an increase in our net position for this current fiscal year. So that's positive, that means that we're going to have more funds for things like allocations to our reserves. No, on the actual pending fiscal year budget, no significant changes. So I'm not going to spend much time there. If there are specific questions that folks have, though, please interject at any time. So why don't we, Adrian? Why don't we go to the first local development slide, which is slide. Which is slide number 14, I believe.
I think it's 18 there.
18, okay. Yeah. So slide 18. Great. Okay. So currently, we are projecting a budget of or seeking a budget of 8.125 million for this current fiscal year. And we're seeking actually a total spend in the fiscal year because of carryovers from previous fiscal years of up to 16.6 million. When we think about the programmatic areas, a big emphasis on the disadvantaged community green tariff program, or community solar, and then debt relief, community outreach. Are sort of amongst our big priorities. Next slide, please. So transportation electrification, remains one of our biggest budget areas. And as I've mentioned previously, one of the reasons for that is these are largely capital investments. So capital investments require more upfront capital, but there is also return on these investments in the form of the revenue from the charging stations that we're going to be investing in. Transportation, really kind of, as we think about sort of the most negative, environmental impacts on our communities, do predominantly come from particularly medium and heavy duty goods movement and transportation along the 580, 80, and 680 corridors. And so, that's both emissions, but that's all, and also air quality. So when we think about our core mission in local development around delivering local benefits, both economic, but also environmental, finding ways to address transportation emissions and pollution, becomes a heavy priority. So with that sort of North Star, if you will, the areas of emphasis are, one, supporting the build out of publicly available charging infrastructure, particularly charging infrastructure available to renters in lower income communities. These are communities that are still relatively underserved with our public charging infrastructure that is currently being built out by private entities. And it also, the lack of that infrastructure becomes a barrier to adoption of electric vehicles because one, a renter may not have the ability to charge in their garage, and then the lack of visibility of fast charging in their communities results in them feeling uncomfortable having a vehicle that they don't know how they're going to fuel. So that's really the big impetus in our public charging work. And then in medium and heavy duty, it's a focus on goods movement in and around the ports, and doing fleet assessment, and then partnerships with goods movement providers and logistics companies to work to identify opportunities to deliver both charging infrastructure, but also electric vehicles. And then we also are working with many of our member cities to assess how we can support the electrification of those municipal fleets. So that could be your police cars, that could be city vehicles, and continuing that assistance, and then working to actually develop business models that will support rapid transition from internal combustion to electric fleets. Next slide, please. So specifically on the charging infrastructure, we are proposing $4 million in this current FY for investment in public infrastructure. We have some rollover from the previous year, and we have the California Energy Commission EVIP incentives, which are incremental to these $4 million that are coming in as well. Currently we have 3 public DC fast charging projects that we're working on with 3 city partners, one in Oakland, one in Piedmont, and one in Livermore. Those projects are largely being funded from the past year's FY. For the current year's FY, for those 4 million, we're going to be looking to partner with more of our cities to identify sites and business models to optimally leverage those $4 million to deliver a significant amount of public EV charging. We also are through the Air District's Clean Cars for All program going to be offering $100,000 of fueling cards to low-income customers who purchase EVs. So when they purchase those EVs, they'll be getting a fueling card, which is a $500 credit towards the cost of electricity. Next slide, please. On the municipal vehicle electrification front, much of this work is still focused on technical assistance. Some of it is that technical assistance is doing assessments of municipal fleets and helping cities understand what are their options for transitioning those fleets to electric. That's a $300,000. We are looking to purchase some level 2 charging that some of our cities already own. If you have an electric car, it's quite common. You'll go into a parking garage that's owned by a city, and there'll be 5, 6, 7 level 2 chargers there. I think our interest is buying those, and then when buying them, making sure that they work. And it's a common complaint we hear is a lot of the level 2 infrastructure is not asset managed effectively, because these are assets that are not owned and operated by an entity that's focused on electric vehicle charging. It's owned perhaps by a city, and the city's focused on the garage operations, not the charging operations. We also are looking at a vehicle to building pilot at critical facilities. This is where vehicles would plug in at a critical facility and be able to power that critical facility during, say, a public safety power shutoff. Next slide, please. On the medium and heavy duty transportation electrification front, a big chunk is technical assessments and technical support, working with a variety of different goods movement providers, from delivery truck operators to shuttle bus operators to drayage truck operators. Drayage trucks are the trucks that move containers from ports to logistics centers. So one of the things that I think is particularly interesting is we are really keen on finding ways to deliver a bundled solution to customers, so that allows us to, with external partners, to bring vehicles and charging to these operators on a service basis. So kind of take some of the headaches of figuring out who the right vehicle provider is going to be, where should we site the charging, integrating all the incentives. Instead, we want to be able to pull a package together for that customer, and all they need to do is say, yes, I want to transition from diesel to electric for my truck fleet. And we bring that forward to them. Not too dissimilar from the work we're doing with solar and storage, where we're bringing all the pieces together, and all the customer needs to do is give us access to their roof and agree to buy the solar electricity from us. Here, I think there's 2 exciting things. We've received $500,000 of grants to support this work, one from the CEC, and most recently a $300,000 grant from the US EPA. That's going to help us assess whether we can build electric vehicle charging infrastructure on regional brownfields. Next slide, please. So our community resilience program, relatively small budget, but actually significant work going on and significant dollars that are going to flow through. These dollars are largely flowing through as procurement dollars, though. So the funds here are largely sort of the enabling of our community resilience. If you recall, we have two major community resilience programs. One is Resilient Home, which is our residential and multifamily solar and storage offering that is currently available to customers. And our second is our municipal and critical facility solar and storage project, where we're deploying solar and storage on what will end up being a couple hundred facilities around Alameda County. The big chunk of budget this year is going into an independent engineering study for the first 40 to 50 facilities. This independent engineering is going to help us as we put a solicitation out to deploy the solar and storage projects. It's going to help us sort of assess the size of the projects, what specific roof loading issues you might run into, interconnection issues, and should streamline the procurement process. We also have continued marketing and outreach for customer enrollment in Resilient Home. And we are going to be rolling out our medical baseline battery offering this summer. So, I believe as our last meeting, we saw we had an approval to actually go out and buy $125,000, $150,000 worth of Yeti Goal Zero home batteries that are going to be given out to customers who have durable medical equipment and live in high PSPS threat zones. Next slide, please. In energy efficiency, our big focus is pursuing our Pursue to Elect to Administer an EE program, where we're seeking $3 million a year in state funds to provide energy efficiency incentives. This FY, we actually don't have a budget ask in EE because we're really focused on pursuing this Elect to Administer. And so a lot of our activity in energy efficiency is going to be focused on that. Our hope being that we're able to launch that kind of right around when our next fiscal year is starting. And at that point, it should have no fiscal impact because we're getting money from the state of California to run the program. Next slide, please. In building electrification, we have three main areas of focus. One is low and moderate income electrification incentives. So these are incentives that we're looking to provide to support the adoption of heat pump hot water heaters and heat pumps for HVAC predominantly in low and moderate income, predominantly multifamily buildings. So these will be incentives for folks to be able to retrofit or replace their existing natural gas appliance with an electric appliance. We have our continued work around induction cooking and incentives in education. What I'll say here is, a big focus. While induction, the amount of natural gas used in cooking is a relatively small amount of natural gas. Cooking with natural gas has a significant environmental effect, especially indoor air quality impacts. And those indoor air quality impacts tend to be magnified in our lower income communities where you may have more people living in a home and not as good ventilation. So there's that sort of direct environmental benefit, but there's also sort of a broader concern that we're trying to address with electrification. One of the primary, in multiple surveys we've seen, one of the primary concerns consumers have raised about all electric homes is cooking with electric. I think there's a sense of sort of cooking with electric harkens back to sort of the electric coils of the 70s and sort of the sense that, you're getting much worse performance and, poor aesthetics as well. And so we have a, really focused effort around providing experiences and magnifying those experiences of cooking induction to show that cooking induction is actually a not just cleaner way to cook, but a better way to cook. And then we do have some electrification workforce development funding planned. One of the ongoing challenges in the effort to electrify our buildings is a lack of a trained workforce. So we want to support that as well. Next slide. Okay, so connected communities is our overall effort focused on reducing disconnections and helping manage arrearages for our customers. So here we have a big push, $1.15 million around maximizing our enrollment in the arrearage management program. We've talked about the arrearage management program extensively, so I won't touch upon that. But this is really, these are dollars that are going to be focused on everything from direct customer outreach to CBO partnerships to media around and education around the arrearage management program and the CareFera programs. We also are, and this doesn't hit as a sort of current budget impact, but we all, as part of the supporting customer debt, is the identifying up to $10 million of current bill arrearages, so uncollectibles that we have that we can provide as that we can write off and provide direct debt relief to customers by wiping those debts off of their bills. Here, we're also very much focused on going after additional state and federal funding. The Newsom administration has, for instance, suggested a $2 billion utility debt forgiveness initiative in their current budget, and we would very much, we're very much working to ensure we get our share. We also are looking to launch the DAC GT, which is our community solar program for low-income customers this year, and in that program, we will deploy a couple megawatts of local energy, solar energy, and based on that solar energy, be able to offer somewhere around 2,000 customers an additional 20% discount on their bill based on the output of this solar energy system. The additional sort of interesting positive, I think, from a financial perspective for EVC around the DAC GT program is this program is funded by the California Public Utilities Commission. Next slide, please. So this is our arrearage management program plan. We have presented facets of this at previous meetings. So, here there's sort of two elements. There is the enrollment side, where we're looking to maximize customer enrollment in the AMP program. And then once we have customers enrolled, equally important is to support retention in the program. The way the AMP program works is for every month you're in the program, you get 1/12 of your utility debt written off. But you can't miss more than 2 bills in a row while you're in the program. Otherwise, you are kicked out of the program and you can't participate for another 12 months. So, we start with targeting marketing, education, outreach, and we sort of use that through the customer journey to partner with CBOs, work to simplify enrollment. One of the challenges we've identified is enrolling in the program is difficult. You actually have to call the PG&E call center, and you have to sort of often wait in line, and it can be a bit of a challenge. So we want to make it much, much more simple. And then, that is hopefully our journey through enrollment. And then once we have customers on, we want to monitor them to see, if we're seeing customers falling out, who are they? And then be able to case manage them to help them stay in the program. And, if necessary, even offer incremental bill credits to those customers to help reduce their current utility costs so that they can pay the residual bills so they can stay in the program. Okay. Next slide, please. What we're going to do is, why don't we, I think that's it. I think that's mostly what I wanted to cover, kind of as stuff that was not in the previous presentations. There's a lot more detail in this presentation, so why don't we leave that to the Q&A though.
Very good. So at this point, colleagues, I will take questions from you. And I see one hand raised by Chair Cal. You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, Nick, for the presentation. I have a few questions as it relates to what is broadly defined, of course, as our local development plan and how we implement that. I'm going to just rattle off the three questions, and then you could go back with each one, no particular order. We define local development very broadly, and that's a good thing. And I think all these things that are listed here that the staff does is all great. And I wish we could triple them. I mean, they're all really good. But one of the things that was envisioned early, before we were created as to what local development would be, is in part having local RPS eligible projects that are built or that we're contracting with in our service area. And when that happens, I know that's hard sometimes because it's sometimes more expensive, but when that happens, where is the dollars for those shown in the budget? It doesn't seem to be shown in our LDP budget. It seems to be somewhere else in our procurement, right? Yet in the broader sense, don't we consider that local development?
Well, so Dan, yes, we do. I think one of the things we've struggled with there, one is the timing of when those projects come online, and the degree to which there's a local premium. So we have our Altamont wind energy project that actually is going to be online this fiscal year. And the way we've typically looked at it is there sort of an incremental cost for local relative to it not being local? And if there is, that kind of incremental cost is something we've applied to local development as a local development expense. In this particular case with the Scott Haggerty Wind Energy Center, I do not believe we actually have assigned a premium to that project relative to California wind. And so it's not showing up as a local development expense because it's a procurement cost, and procurement costs should be considered procurement costs.
Yeah.
In the past, what we've done is we've sort of broken out, there's local development spend, and then there's just sort of local investments that are happening. And so I think in the past, we've actually characterized that project as a local investment. And so we're talking about, we've invested so many hundreds of millions of dollars. But I think at least in the context of our budget setting, it's not relevant. It doesn't affect our budget. So we haven't included it in the budget discussion. That's more of a broader discussion around local investments, broadly speaking.
Okay, but I understand, but you said a moment ago that if there's a project down the road where there's a premium because more or less we could tell there's a premium because it's a local project in our service area, that delta might be attributed to our local development budget, or could be attributed to it. I think you said that, right?
Yes, that is the way we've treated in the past.
Okay, so doesn't that suggest that we should have a line item in the budget for that differential if we feel there are some projects, I guess, in the next fiscal year? Maybe those are 2 or 3 years down the road, so it's not in the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. But at some point, we would see line items for those differentials in our budget, would we not? In our LDP budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've struggled with how do you treat these are procurement costs, so they're not really strictly speaking. I think in the past, what we've done is we've called it's sort of like a local development offset, where we pay for the premium associated with local development for these projects. I think in this particular year, we don't have the projects that we have. So the Wind Energy Center does not carry a local premium, right? So that's a good thing, right? We're building local stuff that doesn't carry a premium.
That's
so,
good.
We don't need to call it out as a line item in the budget because there is no line item to call out.
Got it. So I'm just pointing out to get clarity in my mind that whether not in this coming year, but in some years, there may be a need, if we're expecting this kind of project to happen that's a little more expensive, to put an additional amount of money in our LDP budget for that premium in subsequent years. So
and we've done that in the past, right? So
Okay.
last fiscal year we did have a $1.2 million sort of, we call it our capital set aside for these project premiums. I think
Okay.
what we found is in this coming year there is no capital set aside requirement because we don't have a project. We have local projects, but they don't carry sort of that local premium.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. Let me get on to the next two questions. Sorry, Madam Chair. The second question is, that was all just one question. The second question is any of our, I may have missed it, is any of our LDP strategies that you went over providing some subsidy, outreach and subsidy to get some behind the meter solar on lower income apartment buildings or for lower income homeowners? I realize behind the meter solar is not cheap, but it is, we need solar everywhere, not just big projects that are utility scale. We need small stuff too. And are we looking to help those folks, like apartment buildings where there are low income residents, help get that solar advantage as well? Is that one of our strategies?
Yeah, so that's part of our Resilient Home program. So the Resilient Home program is we have, I think currently 6 different multifamily buildings with, I think upwards of 1,000 units that we expect to benefit from solar and storage that, we deploy through Resilient Home.
Okay. So I think that's great, and I'm hoping we could even up that as years go on, notwithstanding this 1139 problem, obviously. Okay, I see JP nodding his head. Okay, great. My last question is, I thank you so much for including the medium and heavy duty transportation electrification. I think in terms of the crossover or co-benefits in terms of immediate health air quality, that one, obviously, as you pointed out, is key. To the so I'm glad we're doing that. I hope we could even spend more money on that. My question is, have you reached out and talked directly with port officials, Oakland port officials, on this? And I would like to have a conversation offline with you or whoever on staff about that, because there's some things I want to share regarding our port.
Absolutely. Yes and yes.
Okay, so let's set up a meeting soon about that among the right staff, whoever on your staff and me, talk about Oakland Port. I'd love to do that as soon as possible.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you, Chair Kalb. Appreciate your questions, and I think your first question was really salient and just highlighting the fact that our local development business plan is not solely limited to what's in our programmatic budget, but we do have those procurement costs and those benefits from that spending as well. Colleagues, are there any other clarifying questions on the budget before I open it up for public comment? Seeing none, I'll check in with the clerk to see if anyone has submitted electronic comment, and then go ahead and start recognizing folks who have their hands raised via Zoom. And if you're calling in, you would press *9 to be recognized. So I will allow the clerk to go ahead and manage this public comment.
Great. We have 2 speakers signed up for public comment at this time, Blair Beekman and Barbara Stebbins. Blair Beekman, I am unmuting you now.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully I fixed my problems. Thank you for the words of the chair. She offered nice words. Yeah, I was trying to talk about item 1139, and what's interesting is learning how to practice public comment time. If you can, it takes a little practice, but my public comment hopefully can fit into the other items on the agenda today. If you know how to make the connection. Sometimes it's tough to learn how to do that between each other, Thanks for your patience in learning that I really do want to contribute in decent terms and make connections that may be a bit abstract, but I feel are very important and really do connect to agenda items. And sometimes I'm blamed for going off a little, but I really try to connect my items, my thoughts to agenda items. So with this item, this is budget issues, and to deal.
Oh. My apologies. Blair, if you could please unmute yourself.
Oh, am I back? How much did I miss?
Just
Was a
about
lot.
20 seconds.
Oh boy. Well, this is terrible. Well, I hope my IPR. What I'm trying to say, I'm trying to make important connections that may be a bit abstract, and because of my newness and inexperience, sound a bit funky and not really connected. But if you really listen, I'm really trying to connect those thoughts, my thoughts, to agenda items, and I thank you for your patience at this time to respect what I'm trying to connect. With that all said, IPR reports of the fall 2020, I feel very much connect to budget issues of this item and how you're trying to define the budget. I feel you did a great job. The CEO did a great job with his budget presentation at the board of directors meeting last Wednesday.
Blair, if you could please stay on the topic that we.
Yes, I am, sir. This is what I've just explained. I go through an abstract process to explain my connection. Now, with that being said, the budget report of today by the CEO was, I felt, a bit more spoke to projects, whereas person Cal tried to bring it back to relevant matters of the infrastructure of budgeting. Now, with that all said, to talk about something of the IPR reports that I feel fully relate to budget issues, the IPR reports of a year ago, or this past fall, we're reporting, facts of what can be solar and storage that is going to be on a massive decline in the year 2023. Now, you've since changed those numbers a bit, but I think those numbers can very much reflect why we're having issues with AB 1139 at this time. And to address, I think what I've been trying to make a point of is that I feel there's possible upcoming disasters and natural disasters in the year 2023 in the Bay Area. I'm not positive, but I'm asking from your statistics if that's the case. If we learn to talk about that openly, if we're clear with each other on that subject, I think we prepare ourselves for something really important for the next few years, like addressing 1139 in its proper terms. This gives the proper way to address 1139 if we're preparing for an earthquake in the next few years. And if we're open about this subject, it makes it easier to talk about. So good luck how you work on these things and the budget issues that, they're important at this time. And I'm from San Jose. We just had a real serious event the past few days. Preparedness helps. And then it's talking with each other. That it's that combination of things and offering a good openness between each other. That's how we avoid hurting each other in the future. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Barbara Stebbins, you are recognized for 3 minutes.
So I'd like to start off my comment by thanking JP Ross for taking time yesterday with a few of us to kind of go over some of the details on the local development business plan program and point out areas that are going to directly benefit low-income communities and communities of color, frontline communities. I also want to point out that our president has, our current president, our new president, has committed to 40% equity to address, in particular, to address some of the historic, some of the impacts of systemic historic racism. And that we would really like to see the local development business plan eventually at least match that goal. And I think as long as we are committed to putting in the money for the Cal EV VIP program, that probably is not going to be possible. But since that is a 4-year commitment, I think, and I think we're going into a year 2 or 3, I've probably lost track, that hopefully we could begin to move away from having such a large percentage of the LDBP budget being for electric vehicle charging stations that really benefit mostly individual EV customers, which is not, you know, in terms of percentage wise, it's certainly not a large percentage of low income customers. So that said, I also think that we found out about the AMP program being included, outreach being included in the local development business plan. And I think JP Ross did a good job of explaining why it is in that budget. And so I think we feel like that team will probably do a good job of that program, but they need more money. So we think that the local development business plan budget should at least be increased to include more money for that AMP outreach program because of the urgency of the problem, because of the possibility of return on investment. You know, if we invest more money in that program and get more people signed up, there's $10 million in arrearages that maybe we could get as some of that back as benefit. So those are my main comments for today on the budget.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hello, Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power. And just to highlight, I did sign up in advance, so I don't know if that shows up on your end, Adrian. Yes, so I also want to thank the Local Development Business Pound team for our recent meeting with both JP and Alex DeGiorgio, specifically around understanding the details about the budget. As you know, East Bay Clean Power Alliance's emphasis has been on equity and community benefits, particularly for frontline communities, as Barbara spoke to. One of the things that we have been advocating for since January, the beginning of this year, is for resources for resilience hubs, particularly the off-grid solar and battery storage. And I just want to highlight that the critical facilities program that you have money for from the Air District does not recognize community-based, community-trusted resilience hubs, which is what we've been asking for. Resources to fund this infrastructure, resources to also provide technical assistance. And this could be money from EBCE, this could be money from outside grants. We just need those resources to build that infrastructure because of the planned power shutoffs. We do see that there is some unity in the critical facilities program that you have, particularly around schools and community centers would be community-based and trusted facilities that could potentially be really valuable resource hubs for frontline communities. So I think right there is important for us to have an ongoing relationship with community groups of how to ensure that those resilience hubs, that those critical facilities act as resilience hubs in our community. So I look forward to having further conversations and working with community-based groups to make sure that that is a successful program. And also not just for East Bay Community Energy, but also for the cities that make up the program. It's important for the city representatives to keep that in mind, that working with the community is critical to the success of these programs. I'm excited about the battery giveaway. I hope that you're allowing, adding enough money to the budget so that it's more than just 50 free batteries, which was talked about a couple months ago, that we need to be providing more batteries for low income people within the East Bay. Other programs that folks are excited about, the Community Solar Green Tariff. And I want to know more about how much is allocated for bill credits to keep folks successfully in the AMP program. That program is important because of language access.
My apologies, Jessica Tovar. Your time has expired, and that was the last speaker for the public comment for this item.
Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And I just want to appreciate staff and our community members meeting on the side, JP and Alex, for explaining really the theories behind the programs and all the data sets that you're using to kind of predicate the work that's being done. So we'll bring it back for discussion amongst my colleagues. I had just had one unanswered question. Nick, for that GASB 62 fund, you explained the adjustment. So we went from 20 million to 7.7 million because we had that deferred savings from the previous year. Is that 20 million intended to kind of smooth it over just for the next fiscal year, or is it just a pot that we keep on turning over as we smooth that rate?
Yeah, so it's a pot. We don't actually intend to draw from that account in this coming fiscal year. It's actually something we're trying to hold over for the 22-23 fiscal year. And we have the ability, the board has the ability to sort of elect to disperse those funds, or to say, we don't need those funds anymore. Let's allocate them to our general reserves.
Okay. All right, but while we have that PCIA uncertainty, I'm certainly in favor of keeping them where they are for the time being. Colleagues, is there any discussion on the budget, or more specifically any of the highlighted changes since what we saw at the Board of Directors meeting from this month? Any comments to staff? Okay, seeing none, I will thank staff for keeping us apprised of an ever-changing landscape for our budget, and we will get this finalized fairly soon. And that will move us to our next item, which is our legislative update. And I know we're talking about AB 1139 today, but this is an informational item, so we're not going to take any formal action. However, we can give some broad direction, I believe, and let's go ahead and dive in. Do we have Melissa with us to present?
Yes, hi. Okay, thank you. Adrienne, next slide, please. So today I planned to quickly give you an update on SB 612, as well as go through a summary of AB 1139, and then an update on our bill tracker for the bills that we have a position on. I would just note that at the board meeting, there was a request to also discuss SB 617 and whether we wanted to take a position on that. SB 617 did not pass out of the Senate Appropriations Committee. So that's likely to become a 2-year bill. We will see what happens with that in 2022, but it's irrelevant for this legislative year. Next slide, please. So for SB 612, it passed out of the Senate Appropriations Committee on the 20th. It's currently still on the Senate floor. We've requested meetings with our delegation members. Senator Skinner is a co-author of the bill, but particularly targeting the other 3 offices to make sure that they are aware of our support, as well as the support of our member jurisdictions who've sent in letters in advance of the floor vote, which is expected shortly. Assuming that SB 612 passes out of the Senate, it'll then move to the Assembly, the second house, and be assigned to the Utilities and Energy Committee. So that will be the next step. Next slide, please. So moving on to AB 1139. Wanted to give you some background on this bill, and as things in the legislature are always moving quickly, this slide is actually already outdated just a couple of hours ago. on the assembly floor, there were some amendments that were just taken up. So I'll kind of go through those as well. The bill is authored by Lorena Gonzalez. She is the chair of the Appropriations Committee. And also Carrillo, who is on the Utilities and Energy Committee. I also wanted to point out that Assemblymember Quirk is a principal co-author who also sits on the Utilities and Energy Committee and is one of our legislators. So in any case, the description of the bill is as follows. Essentially what the bill is trying to do is ensure that a replacement tariff for NEM be instituted, and that is either by having the CPUC do this, or if the CPUC fails to adopt a replacement, by requiring the CPUC via this legislation to develop a tariff in accordance with the legislation. So one notable change is that the dates here have changed. Instead of requiring the PUC to develop the tariff by February 1st, they are extending that to August. So that gives the CPUC a little bit more time to finalize their NEM proceeding. I would note that we are also participating in the CPUC's NEM proceeding, and the administrative law judge is moving pretty quickly through that proceeding and is expecting a proposed decision by late fall. So I think August 2022 is very, very likely to be hit. So the legislation also eliminates a requirement that the NEM tariff ensure that customer-sited renewable distributed generation continue to grow sustainably. So that's one of the tenets of the law today. That would change. It also would require that an existing NEM customer be transferred to the replacement tariff. And this is another change from today. Instead of no later than 10 years, it would be no later than 20 years from the date that the customer first received service. So the earlier NEM tariffs have more benefits than the later NEM tariffs, and certainly more benefits than what we would expect this latest iteration of the NEM tariff to have. The thinking was that by grandfathering folks for 20 years from when they started service, that should be enough time for them to have recouped their cost. And then if the CPUC fails to adopt this replacement tariff, then this legislation would require a tariff to be developed by the PUC. And it kind of has a few things that it has to do. It has to cost effectively achieve the policy goals and objectives of the state, and include specific alternatives designed for growth among residential customers in disadvantaged communities. It's based on the costs and benefits of the facility for non-NEM customers. One of the changes today is that it would, so here it says it includes interconnection fees and monthly fixed charges based on the cost to interconnect and serve the NEM customer. That has been taken out, and instead it just has to ensure that non-NEM customers do not pay more because of it. And then finally, it would credit the NEM customer, and this was another change, not at the hourly wholesale market rate, but at the utilities avoided cost, which is being determined through the Commission's avoided cost calculator. So apparently Assemblymember Gonzalez was working with NRDC, that's what we've been told, to negotiate these amendments. So they're not yet in print. We're waiting for them to go into print. So we will want to take a closer look at the actual language and see what we think.
I'm sorry.
What I would say right
Melissa,
now, the bill is, sorry.
Negotiating with who? You went in and out. Who is she negotiating?
Sorry, NRDC.
Oh, okay.
Natural Resources Defense Council. The bill is currently on the assembly floor, so it will be up for a floor vote shortly. And I guess what I would say here is that it would be helpful to understand what the board is thinking. We have several options. We could continue to watch this bill. We might want to watch and analyze after the amendments come out. We could take an opposed position. We could also perhaps be more effective than just a straight oppose. with an oppose unless amended if there are particular provisions in the bill that we would want to see changed. In any case, I think the important thing here to reiterate is that the bill will not institute a NEM tariff or any changes to the NEM tariff, assuming the CPUC develops its tariff. And like I said, that is on track. So happy to answer any questions and entertain any discussion.
Are there any questions on the legislative agenda before we go to public comment? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised amongst my colleagues, so I'll check in with the clerk and see if anyone has submitted electronic comment or a speaker card. Otherwise, we can start recognizing folks with their hands raised, which you would do in the Zoom application, or if you're calling in, please press *9 and I will leave it to the clerk to go ahead and call the speakers in order.
Yes, we have 4 speakers signed up for the legislative update: Barbara Stebbins, Jessica Tovar, Ann Harvey, and Blair Beekman. And I should also say that I am giving 5 seconds after the 3-minute clock runs out before you really should close out your comments at the 3-minute clock. I'll be managing that clock. So with that said, I am recognizing Barbara Stebbins for 3 minutes.
Okay, so I was aware that there were amendments to AB 1139 that came up. I think that Melissa has mentioned a couple that I didn't know about that probably came after I last checked. But I will say that local Clean Energy Alliance, the California Alliance for Community Energy, East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and most of the groups that we work with strongly oppose AB 1139 as it was before it hit the got amendments this morning. And I know, so far as I know, that even after the first 2 amendments, it was still going to impose a mandate on the decision from the PUC to reimburse solar customers at the wholesale rate only, that it couldn't be more than the wholesale rate. But Melissa, it sounds like that might be a new amendment, and I would be interested in hearing a little bit more about that again when the committee gets into discussion. So really, the bill was a utility bill. It was written by the IOUs in collaboration with their union. And basically what it would have done is made solar uneconomical. And the first 2 amendments that came out this morning would have kept solar as uneconomical going forward. It simply would have allowed those people who already have solar on their roof to continue to get the benefits that they had by contract when they put the solar on their roof. So though that's an improvement, what it would do is still, it would force basically the solar industry to close up, rooftop solar industry to close up shop and move out of state. And so that would have huge repercussions for the whole concept of local clean energy. So we feel very strongly that as long as that is still in there, and maybe it's gone, and the fixed fee of $80, and I'll just point out, as a solar customer, $80 is more than I would normally have paid without solar on my roof in the summer for my utility bill. So I certainly wouldn't want to continue using my solar if I was going to have to pay more to have solar than I would have otherwise. And then the last thing I want to point out, oh, nope. I lost the last thing I was going to point out. So anyway, we'll have to see where this bill goes. But there's no point to it if all it's going to do is tell the CPUC to do what they're already doing.
Thank you, Barbara Stebbins. Blair Beekman, you are recognized. recognized for 3 minutes.
Oh, hi, Blair Beekman. Thank you. Hopefully my Zoom will be good. I really tried in my previous public comment for the first minute 30 to offer how I work and to speak to the CEO's report from last Wednesday compared to today. I feel that's an acceptable way to work and totally relevant and connected to the agenda matter. Sorry, it's a little difficult for me. Thanks for your patience. To speak about AB 1139, EBCE, the IPR reports of last fall of October and December reported for 2023, solar and storage would be in a sharp decline, and that dirty fossil fuel use would be on a major upsurge. Now, since then, I've been on my earthquake kick. That's a natural disaster preparedness planning ideas to me. I've been on this for a few months now. I've been talking with your staff, and we worked out some things and not other things. What we did work out is that you have since changed those IPR plans and are now working on an even keel of how to work towards solar and storage in the year 2023. Very much of a thank you for that. To myself, this speaks to what AB 1139 may be trying to work towards. They are going to cut off the future of solar at this time to work towards a more dirty fossil fuel portfolio for the next few years to prepare for natural disasters and its need for generator use in the time of a natural disaster. I've been trying to say we don't have to think that way. If we put our full strength into solar and renewables now, after a major disaster, we can be better prepared to come out of a natural disaster time. And I think we really have to put everything just on our ideals right now and prepare well now and not go for shortcuts and not go for the cheap, easy deal that this bill 1139 may be trying to do. And we need to be open about this and talk about it openly and plan and do this fairly, and that way we don't hurt each other. And that way we build our better practices and our better future now. We can do this now. And we don't have to wait. I understand there are some compromises that we have to make at this time, and it hurts. This goes all the way to reimagine and equity ideas, but yet we can practice equity in preparing for natural disaster, and that creates the ideas of what can be reimagined at this time. So something's hopeful. Let's work towards the hope. Let's not be cynical and just say we can just rely on fossil fuels and it's cheap money, because of an upcoming natural disaster. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I want to highlight to the exec team that I did submit a draft resolution to East Bay Community Energy. I would like to see East Bay Community Energy take a stand in opposing AB 1139. We should be concerned about losing net energy metering. We should actually be strengthening any policies that incentivize local clean energy, so that we can have those resilience hub energy pieces that we've been advocating for, microgrids, community shared solar, etc. in our communities to create those jobs, and really jumpstart that transition that we need to do here at home. This is actually a very harmful bill. It will be taking us backwards. We don't have a feed-in tariff. The fact that we don't have a feed-in tariff and now net energy metering is on the line is very concerning, and we ask for your leadership in opposing 1139, and making sure that that we move forward in advancing local clean energy and not allowing this to slip through. And from what I understand from the last updates is that this bill seems to get worse and worse. And so I am very concerned about that and the fact that it's moved so far. So if we can get a commitment from East Bay Community Energy to oppose AB 1139, we absolutely are asking you to do that so that we can continue to work towards bringing clean power to the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that concludes the public comments for this item.
Great, thank you, Mr. Clerk. We'll bring it back to my colleagues. And just a reminder, this is an information item. We can't take any actions today. However, we can make recommendations to staff to bring this back to the full board for contemplation, along with the resolution that was alluded to by the speaker. So any thoughts, colleagues? I know personally, thank you, staff, for the updates on the ever-changing landscape of this bill. This is my dog, she's very interested in 1139. But it does sound to me that the proposition still disincentivizes future rooftop solar for customers and does put our industry into jeopardy. So I am personally interested in seeing the full board consider an opposed position. So next up, I will recognize Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, our board meeting is January, whatever middle of January is. I'm sorry, June, whatever the middle of June is. So I think by then, I think this bill is going to get out of the assembly. If not today, whenever it's voting on now or next tomorrow, whenever. It's going to pass the assembly. But there's an opportunity in the Senate to either kill it or to amend it in a very positive way if that's the only solution left on the table. So I think we should have it on our docket for our full board meeting in June, and that which would allow us to do an oppose or oppose unless amended, depending on as these new amendments came out today. Between now and our board meeting, we will have the ability to do an analysis, to listen to all the solar groups, environmental groups, to see what their analysis is prior to that, and then decide whether, okay, this is still a really bad bill, let's kill it, or if they take the following 6 amendments, it could be okay, so we'll do opposed less amended. We should have both those options in front of us at our June board meeting with whatever analysis staff could put together up until then. So that's, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well put. Colleagues, is there any objection to this approach as so succinctly laid out by Member Kalb? Okay, then I think that's what we're going to go ahead and do. We'll consider this at the full board meeting. Was there input that you wanted specifically on any of the other bills, Melissa, that you explained today?
No, it was really this bill. And if there are particular provisions of this bill that you would find most problematic, it would be helpful to know that as well. But we can certainly do the analysis as requested.
Personally, like I said, I think that even if we're protecting those current NEM customers, I think disincentivizing future rooftop solar opportunities is a bad idea for consumers and for the industry. So that's where I'm at based on all of the information on the table today. Dan, your hand is still raised. Did you have any further comments?
Well, no, but since you asked, to Melissa, I think if you could reach out to, I guess it would be Cal SSA probably is the leading opponent, I imagine. Just to get their input, maybe reach out to the NRDC folks who negotiated, see why they're doing what they're doing. That it'd be helpful to get both those perspectives as part of your analysis. Thank you.
Great, and as a request, you can also attach the proposed resolution just as a public comment to the staff report when it comes to the full board, just as a public comment so people understand, because I'm sure Jessica will come and speak on behalf of the issues that she raised in the resolution, and so the board should have it before us. Great. That will move us along to our next item, and this is item 6, potential office investment. You can take this one, Nick?
I will take this one. All righty.
I think Nick's dining room is the office, right?
My basement, actually. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I live out of county, so I think there would probably be some consternation about moving our HQ to somewhere outside of Alameda County. So next slide, please. So we've been evaluating commercial real estate for a new headquarters. Our current site at 1999 Harrison Street had the lease there ends October 2022. So we've been working to determine kind of what our best next step is. Do we want to extend the lease there? Do we want to get a lease elsewhere, get more space elsewhere under a lease, or pursue a purchase option? We are working with Newmark Knight Frank, who advised us on our lease at 1999 Harrison Street, and they have been supporting us through surveying a wide variety of available options. So next slide, please. Much like our previous office search process that we undertook in 2018, we have some core parameters, right? So one is we want a site for this primary office that is centrally located and has access to public transportation for staff in Oakland. Based on kind of that very high priority, you end up really focusing on probably 4 or 5 sort of areas that are adjacent to BART. Majority of those BART stations are the Lake Merritt, 12th Street, and the 18th Street. Gosh, it's been so long since I've been there. There's the 12th Street BART, and then there's 24th Street. 19th, 18th, 19th Street BART station. So those are sort of the 3 hubs. We did extend our search out to sites closer to the MacArthur BART station, as well as the San Leandro BART station. So those were the 5 primary areas that we evaluated for office space. We do want a space that can allow us to showcase energy efficiency and building electrification upgrades. So some ability to actually deploy some of these measures within the building, but also a space to be able to show, to convene groups and potentially even have some sort of a showroom where we can actually show off the equipment and allow vendors to sort of invite people in to show off electric cooktops, as an example. We would also like to have a space that would allow us to host public meetings for the CAC and board subcommittees. I think we've so far gotten direction to focus on continuing to have our primary board meetings in Hayward. Given the size of the dais and their IT, I think there's a lot of reason for that. Though, the sites we've looked at could potentially even allow us to host our own board meetings. And as I said, having something to even allow for more kind of community space to for community groups potentially even to host meetings. You think about say the Oakland climate action planning effort. This is a space that potentially in the future could support that, or other community groups that are looking to host meetings or climate or clean energy convenings. We would want our space to be suited to be able to support that. Next slide, please. So we've been monitoring the market and we've toured a number of properties over the last 6 months, and with an initial focus on offices to buy. One of the reasons we've been focusing on buying versus leasing, to the last point, is to get a space that is sufficiently large to support not just our office needs, so staff office needs, which is going to be roughly 7,000 to 9,000 square feet for our growing agency. We also wanted to be able to support this public meeting space. And kind of in your traditional Class A office building, we found it hard. We did not find many spaces that would support both this public meeting and community space as well as office space. So, with that in mind, we have sort of focused on purchase options. And so we have toured 3 sites, one in Emeryville, one in Berkeley, and one in Oakland. We did not find any sites in Hayward or San Leandro, within a half a mile of the BART station that were for sale and were in that 10 to 15 square foot range. So we focused on these 3 sites and then, eventually a next site. So we toured these 3 sites, and I think they all had their pros and their cons. Next slide, please. So after touring a number of these sites, we came to the 250. Adrian, I think Council Member Lopez. Oh, okay, sorry. We toured the 251 8th Street location, which is located at 8th Street and Alice, about a block and a half from Lake Merritt BART. And we found that of all the sites that we've toured, this building kind of met all of our criteria most closely. So it's a standalone building. It is an older building, but the building has been totally renovated from a kind of HVAC, ADA, and seismic standpoint. So the building is in good sort of modern shape. Though kind of has a nice historic aesthetic. It's a 3-story building. On the first floor is a large open space that we would set up as a community meeting space and a space for subcommittees, the CAC as well. There's also a space that could potentially work very well for demoing equipment and serving as sort of a clean energy and advanced energy showroom. Next slide, please. So based on that, I think we've decided that it is the site that we feel like makes the most sense from a sort of a fit perspective relative to the other sites that we toured. It is located in Oakland's Chinatown in a disadvantaged community, which, I think, among other things is significant in the sense that we can create a clean energy and climate community space in this frontline community. So, it serves as a place to gather and organize and collaborate. We think that that's, particularly interesting and valuable. So now to the sort of the financial comparison. This is a little bit of an eye chart. Next slide, please. Okay. So, first we want to think about the idea of entering into the kind of this lease versus buy option. So when we look down at option right here, 2 Oakland DT, and we have plus Dublin, and I'll get to why we include plus Dublin in a moment. But if we look at Oakland DT and then San Leandro 15K, so those are sort of our 2 lease scenarios, are leasing 15,000 square feet in downtown Oakland or leasing 15,000 square feet in downtown San Leandro. Your range of costs are between 11.5 million for your cost to lease in downtown Oakland and 7.6 million if you in your cost to lease in San Leandro. So that's sort of what we think sort of our effective range of cost would be over the next 10 years. Now, as we think about that compared to a purchase option, if we were to purchase a property and assuming a $5.3 million purchase price, a $1.1 million build out cost, and a debt financing of $5.8 million with $3.6 million of buyer equity. Your assumed total cost, after 10 years, if you assume a sale of the building at the end of 10 years, is $4.1 million. So what we're seeing is, an expected cost savings for a purchase option, of a pretty significant quantity of, over $3 million over the course of 10 years. Now, certainly we may not elect to sell the building at the end of 10 years. We may just say, we're going to continue to occupy, and your lower cost of occupancy as a, frame of reference, your expected costs in a given year are sort of between $650,000 and $750,000 a year relative to, your lease costs in San Leandro of $660,000 to $800,000. So, call it $700,000 a year. So you're actually paying less to own than you would to lease in San Leandro, and significantly less to own than to lease in downtown Oakland. So we think from a value standpoint, purchase makes sense at this time, given our financial position and, kind of the fact that we have significant reserves to be able to put a down payment down. All right. Now, let me just speak, we include sort of this idea of a Dublin 2K occupancy. And I think the reason we have that in here too is just as a frame of reference. We do think that in addition to our headquarters, that we're proposing to pursue a site in the downtown Oakland area, we are going to want to set up a contact center that would house our call center and serve as a community meeting space, a customer service space in the Tri-Valley. And so we think that that was something we wanted to just sort of put a comparable out there for. So, as a frame of reference, if we were to buy the 251 8th Street site and lease 2,000 square feet in Dublin, the all-in cost of doing both of that is still less than our lease cost for just Oakland, and equivalent to the lease cost for just San Leandro. So, this is an informational item, though I think we are seeking some feedback as to sort of whether or not we should continue, forth with the site in downtown Oakland. The process here would be to potentially meet in a closed session to discuss, the specific terms and conditions for an offer, and then to pursue an offer, and then to bring that back to the board, the full board, in open session to approve a purchase contract for the site. So from a process perspective, that is one option, certainly, so that, we can pursue other options as well. So.
Time for questions. Colleagues, do you have any clarifying questions for staff on this item? Let me see. Chair Kalp has his hand raised. You're recognized.
Thank you. So, I mean, now that we are kind of established over our first years, it seems like purchasing it rightfully could be considered an option. We're not going to kind of fall under and go, disappear. So I'm glad you're considering that. Just a curiosity, I know CCAs are still pretty new. Are there any other CCAs that have purchased their headquarters?
Yeah, so I know that Sonoma Clean Power has purchased their headquarters. I'm not sure about Marin Clean Energy. I have it in my head that they have purchased their headquarters as well, but I'm not 100% certain. There are a number of smaller CCAs that occupy city space. So for instance, Valley Clean Energy operates out of a City of Davis owned building.
Okay. And there's a separate but still important discussion that I think you are already starting to think about as we eventually come out of COVID. How do we have multiple locations legally, for board meetings and whatnot, or a satellite office or something like that, so people don't have to travel from, Livermore to Oakland for a meeting if they can just conference. You're aware of this already, but with COVID, it's opened up. There's all this whole new question that we and everybody else is going to try to be figuring out in the next year or so.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why we're interested in having at least one, we'll call it, say, satellite office, and potentially, multiple, is to support community meeting space, being able to host, as we grow, being able to host board members that may want to go to our site, as opposed to doing it from home. So for instance, you could say, we have 2, 3, even 4 sites sort of around the county. These secondary sites would be smaller, and they may, we may do something as simple as like sublease conference rooms, or we may actually set up our own offices in those situations. But they would be exactly for that, for board members and members of the community. Now, I don't think we would want to have something that we're paying for all the time. If it's just to support a board meeting once a week, once a month, or 2 or 3 meetings a month, we'd want to have more use for it. So that was sort of our thinking of, you have our contact center, and you have some space adjacent to the contact center that would be for community meeting, and that would not be in the north zone. As we, for the CAC purposes, we think about sort of 4 areas. That would not be in North County. That would be somewhere else in the service territory that, makes sense. And I think that's where we would start. And I think as we grow, maybe we actually have a 3rd site somewhere with marketing, some outreach staff that are headquartered in there, so they can, keep boxes of collateral. So when they're going out and doing events, they don't have to drive into Oakland. There's an office space there, and they're also hosting events. So I think multi-site strategy is definitely what we're going to pursue over time.
Thank you.
Great. Mayor May?
Sure. That's why I was hoping, like, when we were talking about how we can do outreach into the satellites, not the headquarters itself. But I know that Fremont has been very active in the past. We've hosted the Clean Tech Open 5 different times, and we've also been involved with a lot of the incubator space. And we have a lot of interest. And one of the things I think we add as a value add is also the MVROP. When we talk about the future of green and clean technology, it's about having the companies that can help partner with us. And we would like to continue that demonstration from our electrification of our fleet. And when you come to utilization, I think we have the most EVs of any zip code. And also we have 3 of our 11 fire stations that have demonstrated that with our own local manufacturers in terms of being able to microgrid an island. And as we're moving forward, and I'm looking at things like safe parking strategies or the next phase of workforce development, I think there could be some real synergy in how we address implementing and creating jobs, balance, and upward mobility and upskilling. And that's one of the things that I think, would be a different approach, rather than strictly using it as a facility, but using it as a catalyst or a hub that reaches out to those other areas, whether it is to the MVROP, which has the training center for students. And we have also a green certificated program at Ohlone. So you'd be able to pull in the education pieces of it, well, the hands-on training, as well as you would have some people like NextTracker and other ones who are doing those implementation and create the jobs and internships that would then, apprenticeship programs that would then lend to the future of lowering the cost and how we're addressing that. And then from the city's perspective, we are very forward thinking and wanting to adapt the policies, whether it's coming to the housing development, commercial retail space. We also have a green innovation center, and it's adjacent to the hub. Of when you talk about to 2 BART stations, and actually 3 BART stations if we're, by the time you come in, but we're working on that right now too. So those are some of the things that I think would make it a a well-rounded approach in terms of not just strictly a building, but really a change in how we implement, the strategy of the thought process behind CCAs and the community partnership. I think that that's where I would be able to see us possibly, whether it's in this city or others, but having that wraparound is really the messaging that we want to deliver, and having connections between, we talk about jobs, housing balance, we talk about workforce development and having jobs, livable wages. This would then directly create those types of jobs that you're looking for. And I would love to replicate the apprenticeship program. It was just highlighted today in the San Francisco Chronicle, where one of the people that we were able to put into that program now is already a supervisor of the line. And so we want people to have not just teaching them a skill, but teaching them a skill that takes them and their families and their community to a better level in affordability. And there's nothing better than to be able to do that in your own community, as this is just a place to demonstrate that, showcase that technology.
Great, thank you, Mayor May. I always appreciate you bringing a big picture lens to all of our items, and I think your points are well made.
Thank you for your patience, because I was trying to do between different devices today, and sometimes technology is a blessing and a curse. So thank you for your patience today. I was watching and listening to everything, but I couldn't comment very smoothly earlier.
And I know Member Lopez is in her car, so I'll see if she's in a safe place to pull over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm fine. I'm hands-free, so thank you. So thank you very much for starting to look at the potential. I agree that this is the right time in the EBC's life cycle to explore, where we land. I've done facilities management as an elected for many years now. There are so many hidden costs or buried costs associated with purchasing a building or rehabbing a building, even if you think that it's up to snuff in your case. In this case, saying it's seismically there, something like there or whatever. So, I would say even before the recommendation is made that we have further vetting on whatever 2 or 3 locations are zeroed in on as to what it would cost for EBCE to actually get the building in a way that is acceptable for the organizational needs, rather than just like, well, this room will be used for that and this and that, because I can tell you can get expensive very fast rehab an older building. And I think that needs to be part of a cost analysis, because I can tell you easily burn through $3 million on any project rehabbing our older buildings. Our dispatch center, which we just rehabbed, was like $8 million. So I just want to be very cautious, before we actually put our arms around or embrace any particular site, that we go in with our eyes wide open. Secondly, one of the things that I am interested in, and I think it goes with how the organization grows over time, and having a building that has that kind of agility in use of its space. So it could be having additional space on there already that may not be fully utilized now, but would be more utilized in the medium term, whether it be some of the things that Mayor May has referenced or whatever have you. But really, agility of use and scalability of use is also important. That's how we in our city look at our buildings and our rooms, our conference rooms and spaces, of what are the 5 different ways this can be used over the next 20 years, in some cases even 50 years for one project that I've been working on. How could that space be used over the next 50 years as we've invested there? And so I think that's another component that we need to be considering as well. And of course, the thing that concerns me, and Chair Kalb has indicated, is that we have a service area that's quite big, especially now with Tracy included, and how do people manage to get somewhere located? And I think the idea of branch offices or branch locations or satellite locations is important, but again, there's another cost component to that. So I do hope that the organization, as we come out of COVID and all we've learned, will be open to having a hybrid model of meeting, including these executive meetings that we're having here. I mean, there's no sense of having to be trying to get to Oakland on a Friday through all of Friday night traffic and then say that we're trying to sort of decarbonize our fleet vehicles, right? Or, I mean, it's actually kind of ironic. And so I just hope that we can culturally borrow from what we've learned here and have a lot of our meetings be a hybrid model where we do what we call Zoom in rooms. So those that want to Zoom in can, and those that want to room in can. And that might actually help save us some costs for having to have these satellite locations that may be, underutilized or ornamental, or trying to have a nod to the fact that we're very large geographic reach. I think there's a way of using technology to be able to compensate for that. So these are just some of the thoughts at first blush. Of course, I'm always going to push for my community, but I do want to be fair. I want to make sure that we have something that fits for the whole JP, all the members of the JPA. So I think we just need to do a little bit more research here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Lopez. Nick, did you want to respond before I look for public comment?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to just ask some additional questions, really, just as we think about it. Just as we think about some of the additional, just as we think about next steps here, because I think one of the reason why I want to bring it forward and just have this discussion is, we are in commercial real estate is not exactly like residential real estate, in that, like you find a property and you have to be able to move quickly because you're going to, there's 20 bidders. But for the kinds of properties we're looking at, which really are sort of 12 to 18,000 square feet, there aren't a lot of buildings. It is a limited stock of buildings that would make sense. We're not going to buy a big office building. We also want to, to Councilmember Lopez's point, we want to buy a building that is pretty turnkey. We don't want to buy an old building that requires a lot of rehab. It needs to be, pretty much ready to occupy with, mostly sort of what we would call like tenant improvements. Maybe we want to put an office here, put a wall there, but really no sort of fundamental changes to things, systems, HVAC, lighting. And so I guess what I'd really like to sort of get feedback on is, do you want us to develop a more clear set of like parameters for this? I think we feel like we have gone through a fairly extensive search process to sort of assess where is the market right now. And so we've seen what the market is, and we think from what we've seen in the market, the 251 8th Street site is the site that makes the most sense. And because it has been recently totally refurbished, it doesn't have a lot of those sort of requirements for rehabbing. I think as we think about the requirements, it really is outfitting it with cubicles and desks and all those kinds of things. And then also thinking about, what kind of a community room would we want? How would we want to sort of set that up? It's mostly sort of interior architecture though. But if we want to pursue this site, I think our view is we want to get some feedback as to sort of the level of comfort in moving expeditiously to sort of taking this to the whole board, or is the preference, no, we want some more work to be done or different kinds of questions to be answered before we were to bring it to the whole board for more of an in-depth discussion about whether or not we want to put an offer in.
Okay, thank you, Nick. And while we consider that, we will go to public comment. And in light of the time, we're going to limit public comment to 1 minute per speaker. And please, speakers, keep your comments framed to the topic of the potential real estate that we're discussing. And I will leave it to the clerk to call the speakers in order.
Great. We have two public speakers for this item, Blair Beekman and Jessica Tovar. Blair Beekman, I am recognizing you for 1 minute.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. A really nice item. Thank you. Thank you very much for the words of Mayor May, who really described what a future substation process can be about. I think Jessica Tovar has often talked about this as well. It is my concern that, with all the good practices that can be a part of a future substation, are these ideas of possible emergency preparedness as well. Some sort of communications line, a Wi-Fi line that can be available during a time of emergency for public use, the same way as Bayrix is used, one that can be developed for the public, should be an interesting idea. And I've been talking a lot about emergency issues over the past 8 months now. I hope I can be better addressed about the subject so I don't go off sounding like a fool about this, and I can be direct and honest and open, and we all can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar is recognized for 1 minute.
Jessica Tovar, there's no position on this issue from East Bay Clean Power Alliance, but I wanted to highlight a lot of what Lily May said, probably way better than I probably could have articulated. Was pretty much a lot of the thoughts that crossed my mind as we were talking about East Bay Community Energy's potential new facility. And I know you mentioned potentially one of the sites in Oakland, and I know for a fact one of our Asian American nonprofits in the community has been struggling to find a Chinatown-based resilience hub site. And this would be a great opportunity to cross-pollinate between EBCE and one of our local community groups. So that is something that occurred to me. Another idea, yeah, I just think it was great. Thank you so much, Lily May. By the way, PG&E is also moving into downtown Oakland. Their new headquarters will be there. So that was another thing that crossed my mind. I'm out of time, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, speakers. We'll bring it back to the board for further comments. Mayor May, your hand is raised. You're recognized.
So I was just going to mirror some of the comments that people have, and I appreciate Nick Chassett for his comments about how this could be a catalyst in working with an underserved community. I feel that that's really important when you look at a placement of your headquarters, and I think that also the accessibility for your workers. In my former life, I wore a hat where I was responsible for our worldwide for our company at that time for site facilities and placement. And so I know that I have a little bit of a former life in this area, but I think that having accessibility to your workforce, making a difference in the community that you're choosing to situate yourselves, working with the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce and with people like Carl Chan, who are community leaders, would be a natural fit. And I feel that right now in this period, especially as we're closing on Asian Heritage Month and Affordable Housing Month, these are all things that you can tie into the future location, and having that placement, I think, would be very key. And I'd be very excited to see how we can take some of these programs, whether it's there or elsewhere, and replicate it throughout the entire areas which East Bay Community Energy serves. Ideally, these are programs that we can be able to develop and pilot and be able to share in other parts of the delivery service areas, because that's what it truly means to be a community partner, not just for one area, but for the whole community as a whole. And I think that that would make East Bay Community Energy a clear catalyst and a clear recognized leader in this area among the CCAs. And so I would hope that, I'm open to the idea of looking at Oakland's location. If you think that's the best location, it helps me if you have the scopes and design, and it seems like you have of the proposals and what you're looking for. And then that we can take it to our fellow commissioners and to be able to share on the board how this would be able to help us. I think that sometimes it's hard to make these decisions, to make these investments, but it's important to be penny wise and not pound foolish. But looking at the way things are going with real estate, while there has been a change in some of the utilization and people are working remotely, I do think we need a physical core location, and real estate is generally something that tends to go up still. And so if we're able to find a building that meets the facility needs and it'd be a good investment for us, I'd be supportive of bringing this discussion before the commission, the entire commission. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll give my comments now. I'm just looking at a population density heat map of our territory. And I think this, the recommended location that staff is exploring is actually very perfectly poised to be really, while it's not physically in the center of our territory, it really is accessible by most of our ratepayers. And I don't know if all of the I don't believe all of the members of the current executive board were around when we went through this exercise a couple of years ago, but we were able to give some good feedback back then. I know that there was a lot of concern about seismic quality of the buildings, and it seems that staff has really taken those comments to heart in terms of what Nick reflected about really having a turnkey solution. And with I trust that staff has done its due diligence and really looking at all of the qualifying properties in that 12,000 to 18,000 square foot range. So I hope they will just bring, I personally would like to see us move forward with exploring a purchase of that building, if that's the direction that staff is heading in, but also bringing back to the board specific information about whether that building would require any other upgrades. We know it's taken care of seismically, but are there any other capital investments that we would need to make before we could actually use that building? Those are my comments. Nick, did you want to respond? Your hand is raised.
No, I'm sorry. That's I need to lower it. I just haven't done it yet.
Member Lopez.
Thank you. Yeah, and I that is, thank you for indicating that. I agree, and that is what I had said earlier, is that I want to go in with eyes wide open, and in terms of what capital improvements may be further needed. As I said, in my experience is that there's always something that, when you open up a building, it ends up being a can of worms that things we didn't know or foresee. So if there's a way of us, and I don't know if it's already been done, and I apologize if I cut out there was a little section in there when I was driving, I was not able to, but if there's a way to do a full on inspection and hire just our own consultant, for that, does facilities, management, or looks at and just make sure that an extra set of eyes that has that professional background. And if that's already been covered, I apologize, but that would be really fantastic. Just the one little step before, going before the board, just to make sure there aren't any surprise or ahas in the conversation when the full body. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that Newmark has people who get paid to kick the tires, right, Nick? But maybe a little transparency to the board in terms of how that process works and what that information actually is. So yeah, I'll give you a chance to respond, Nick.
Just very quickly, I know we're running out of time here. I think what we would say is we have a certain amount of that's been conducted, and we would have we would want to talk about in further detail. If we put any offer we would put in would have robust contingencies, for engineering, all these things, right? So I think if we were to pursue an offer, that would be one of the contingencies of the offer, would be the ability to go in and do all this assessment.
Very good. And then colleagues, I just want to be mindful of the time. It is 2:04 p.m. We have received within our agenda a PowerPoint, which is an update to Energy Resilient Public Facilities Program update. Do we want to just accept that, or do we want to hear a presentation today? I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Are folks available for another 15 minutes?
I think actually what I would recommend is, this was specifically in response to some comments that were, some public comment at our meeting. I think I would suggest that this is something we can cover at our next board meeting as an agenda item there. I think what's important just to highlight is, we have 44 sites that are already under development. many of those are, of those 44, only 3 are police stations. I know that was an issue that was raised. Of those sites, you have city hall, parks, emergency centers, food bank, library, 9 community centers. So just to highlight, even in these first 44, significant and diverse types of buildings that are very accessible to the community. So that's all I have to say on that.
Very good. Thank you for that brief summary of what would have been a regular presentation. Is there anyone are there any clarifying questions from the committee? Seeing none, Mr. Beekman, I see your hand raised, and I will grant you 1 minute for public comment, and Jessica Tovar as well. And I'll leave it to the clerk.
Great. Blair Beekman, I am recognizing you for 1 minute.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Again, to note, a very, very much of a thank you that in looking over the fall and December, October 2020 IPR reports, with such a massive decline in solar and storage, you have worked on that issue, and you are now for 2022 and 23 working on an even pace for solar and storage. That took a lot of effort from yourselves, and that's the sort of things I want to be able to talk about in future meetings, and that I think you can bring to the state level and to AB 1139 and show them what you're doing, and that can be some sort of example, that they don't have to cut off the future procurement of solar and storage at this time. Not a very good idea. I don't want to work in absolutes. I'm working to just raise points and ask questions. And from there, it gives an openness and clarity that we can make good decisions, and we don't have to be confused about our decisions, and work together towards healing the community. Thank you.
Okay. Jessica Tovar is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier that where we see unity with the critical facilities is the schools, community centers, and potentially the food banks. And we really want to work together to make sure that these are deployed in the most vulnerable frontline communities within Alameda County and City of Tracy. The second piece is we still don't have any commitments from East Bay Community Energy on funding community-based and trusted resilience hubs. And that is something that we've been asking for since early this year. And how can we get funding to make sure that our community groups who have started resilience hubs or who are trying to start resilience hubs get the funding, the resources, the technical assistance from our local community energy program. So that's it. We really are trying hard to get clean power to the people, and we appreciate your cooperation in working with us.
Great, and are there no further electronic comments?
There are no further electronic comments.
Okay, thank you. So that will, if there are no further comments from my colleagues, we can go ahead and close this item. Bear with me 1 second while I pull up the agenda. That moves us to committee and member staff announcements, including requests to place items on future board agendas. Are there any requests for future agenda items outside of the staff bringing energy resilient future public facilities to the full board? Okay, seeing none, we're ready to adjourn. It is 2:09 p.m. Thank you everyone so much for your participation. Member Lopez, I'm glad you're parked somewhere safely after your drive, but thank you for participating in the meeting and multitasking. And everyone have a great Memorial Day weekend. The best to you and yours.
Be safe, everybody.